Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Bike Walk Commission meeting for the month of October 2022. I'm Tanner Thompson. I'm the chair of the Bike Walk Commission. We've got a couple other commissioners here, and I hope that a couple more join. But Christine Bisceglia and who else do we have? Is that it? Is it just me and Christine? It's just me and Christine. Hoping some more commissioners join. The first 10 minutes of our meeting is open for public comment. I do love to give priority to people who haven't ever been to the meeting before. So if you haven't been before and you have some public comment, feel free to put your hand up, either on the video or on like through your virtual hand. All right, I'll open it up to anybody then. Would anybody like to give public comment before we start the meeting? Or before we get to the rest of the agenda, I should say. Brian, go ahead. Welcome, Brian.
My public comment is, how are you feeling today?
How am I feeling today? I'm feeling pretty good. What Brian's referring to is that I ran the Sono half marathon yesterday, and it was an adventure. It was an exercise. I've never considered myself an athlete, but I've been running, and about mile 11 is when my legs told me they were going to give out, and I was like, no, you got to stay with me. So yes, I'm feeling pretty good though, thankfully. Any other questions, or is that it? Yes,
Rebecca, yeah.
Go ahead.
I raised my virtual hand, but it didn't work. So
sorry.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rebecca. I'm fresh to Norwalk less than 2 weeks ago. Moved here directly from Germany, and my family's originally from Philadelphia. So I'm here with my husband and 2 children, and we purchased upon arrival 2 e-bikes and have 1 car, and we're trying to rely on pedestrian and biking transportation for a lot of our day-to-day functions. So I've talked to Tanner about our experiences and excited to see how I can contribute and give some input from our experiences.
Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks for coming. Thanks for bringing your perspective, especially your perspective from living in Germany. Rebecca and I actually lived in the same city in Germany, which is super coincidental. And we know some of the same people there, in fact, which is great. Any other public comment? All right, well then, without further ado, actually, Dr. Berkey, would you like to introduce yourself briefly? I'm sure we'll involve you quite a bit toward the end in our public health discussion.
Sure, and you can call me Wendy. My students all call me Berkey, but Wendy's good. Yeah, I have been at Sacred Heart in teaching in exercise science and public health since the year 2000. And about 10 years ago, I joined you all for a couple of meetings, but then became more involved in Fairfield. And that's actually where I met Mark Fenton, who is the author of the article that you selected. I've done some research into the built environment, so I'm really interested in that topic. I've lived in Norwalk since the 90s. So welcome, Rebecca, to Norwalk. I can give you lots of tips. And I'm just a proponent of health promotion and walkability and accessibility. I've seen really positive changes in our city in the last couple of decades. So I've been meaning to kind of get involved as much as I can back into this group. So thank you for letting me join you.
Well, you're so welcome. Thanks again for joining. So glad to find you in the community here, to know that we have a public health expert, another one, in addition to all the ones that we have that work for the city, of course, like Julia. Thanks for coming today, Julia. We got a few people who have joined since I kicked off public comment. Is there anybody else who would like to give public comment? All right, so we'll move on to the next thing on the agenda. I'll go ahead and present the agenda really quick. And we have a lot of things on it. I think actually, I don't usually do this, but I think I might go through it really quick, just so everyone can see what's on the agenda. We've got Matt Pence, the CFO and acting CEO of the Norwalk Transit District, who has agreed to join us for 10 minutes to talk about the transit district. We've also got Garrett Bolella from TMP, who we've met before. He's going to talk about a grant application for some roundabouts here in the city. I have a whole laundry list of things to talk about. Greg from TMP then also has a whole laundry list of things to talk about. Christine's going to give a quick update on the bike safety classes thread. Then we'll have the paper discussion. about how the built environment affects child development. Emily's going to talk about the work she's been doing on social media and the email newsletter, and that should all be doable in the hour and 23 minutes we have left. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the time over to Matt Pence, Acting CEO for the Norwalk Transit District. Welcome, Matt.
Hey, thank you, Tanner. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me on. Congratulations, Tanner. It sounds like you finished the half marathon, and welcome, Rebecca. So it's all good stuff. That's a lot more than I did yesterday, Tanner. I watched a lot of football and ate way too much food. So, and normally on Sundays I cycle, but the weather wasn't too good, so I didn't get out. So at least you got your exercise in, because I certainly did.
Yeah, it was gloomy and kind of cold, but after a few miles, you warm up, you know?
Yeah, good stuff. All right, well, I know I don't have a whole lot of time, and there's definitely a lot to discuss. So I'll try and go through some of who we are, what we do, share some information, and hear some questions if you like. But we're the Norwalk Transit District. We were established in 1973. We are technically a quasi-government organization. So we're governed by two commissioners appointed by the mayor of the city of Norwalk. Our operations are funded by the state. Our capital assets are funded 80% by the FTA and 20% by the state. So a lot of our money comes from the state and the feds, and then the city gives us a portion for some local needs and operating funds. So there's a lot of compliance stuff that we have on our end, a lot of state compliance, a lot of FTA compliance, and then the city would like some stuff every now and then. But basically our business is two major components. There's the fixed route system, which are the buses that run on a loop, on a schedule. They serve the city of Norwalk. We provide some service in Westport and in Stamford as well. And then the ADA paratransit service. That's also a big piece of our business. So basically, anywhere we have a fixed route, within 3/4 of a mile, you have to offer paratransit services for any elderly and disabled individuals. And so while we serve the city of Norwalk, we do all of the ADA work for Stamford, which is a big chunk of what we do. So that basically means we have two types of buses. We have a fleet of 74 buses. 39 of them are large sort of fixed route buses. Our commuter shuttles are 30-footers. And then our larger buses are 35. And then the Coastal Link is our regional service, which is, it's actually our most traveled route, the best ridership. It runs from Norwalk all the way up to the Milford Mall. So a lot of people kind of jump on for certain legs of it, but it's shared, the service is shared between us, Greater Bridgeport Transit Authority, and the Milford Transit District. So that's a good regional line. And so just as a side, I was doing, yeah, there you go, perfect. All of our large buses do have bike racks for you guys. I guess there's holders that will hold up to 2 bikes right now. And it's interesting, every now and then we find bikes in the lost and found here. So I always wonder about that. But yeah, that's our system right there. I appreciate you pulling up the map. Those are all of our fixed routes in Norwalk. And then as you can imagine, within 3/4 mile of a radius is where there's an ADA requirement to serve. Typically, pre-COVID, our fixed route ridership was over 1 million. We had about 1.4 million riders in year-ending fiscal 2019. The current year that I'm wrapping up right now, we had about 988,000 riders. So just under 1 million. Definitely took a hit. The fixed route system took about a 25% hit this past year to pre-pandemic levels, and the ADA system took a larger hit, 39 to 40%. And that's, I think, because of the more vulnerable population, elderly, disabled, have taken a little bit more time to get out there with confidence, to do their trips and see their doctors and stuff and take public transportation. But there's definitely been some good initiatives, one of which is free fares. The state went fare free in April. So actually, in the past few months, we've seen our fixed route ridership exceed pre-pandemic levels. So I think the fare-free model has been successful. Also, the summer, you usually see an uptick, but the fares come back in the beginning of December. So that's pretty much the gist of what we do. It does go a little bit beyond Norwalk. As I said, we provide service in Westport and in Stamford, and Westport, and a little bit in Greenwich as well. In Westport, we had commuter shuttles, then the pandemic hit, and we were able to switch to the on-demand Wheels to You model. That's something that we were one of the first in New England to roll out, was the Wheels to You on-demand model. that basically works similar to an Uber, where where riders can use an app to request a shuttle, and then we provide them as long as they're within a zone. We'll provide them transportation at a lower rate than the Ubers and the Lyfts of the world. So we're seeing some encouragement with that. We launched it mostly for the entertainment district here in Norwalk in, I think, 2018. And it was, it's kind of a sad story, actually. It was ramping up really nice. We were getting over 500 rides a week. We were feeling good about it. And then the pandemic happened, and it really got hit hard. So we're working to get it back. We're looking at ridership all the time and hoping that it's a good transportation solution for the city of Norwalk. And yeah, I mean, that's sort of what we do. A little overview. Do you guys have any specific questions?
Yeah, let's go. All right, Audrey's already got her hand up. Go ahead and put your hand up if you've got another question, and we will go from there. I want to squeeze one in since I'm leading the meeting. Matt, I've heard some people tell me that this coverage area here is not actually accurate, that you actually cover the entire city. Is that true?
So that
With
is
both of you.
well, it's not it's so here, let me think of the best way to explain this. That's our zone. That's our original zone. It's expanded a little bit. However, and I'm the finance guy, so bear with me. I don't have my terms entirely right, but there are certain points outside of that zone that we will stop at. They are dedicated points. So there's
like you've got Darien, you got Rowayton, you've got Merritt 7 up here.
So we'll go there only if it's outside the zone. There's a good one above, by the DMV up there. So if you call for a ride up there, it's a little targeted area that we will come pick you up, and and as long as it's within that shaded area, we'll serve that area. Gotcha.
But like, for example, I live in this neighborhood right here where I'm sadly directly outside the service area. But yeah,
I'm in a similar situation as you, Tanner. I'm a little bit outside the zone, not by much. Yeah, there's not much service right now, but we do have some ambition to expand the zone. But for now, that's sort of how it works.
Great. All right. People with their hands up. Audrey, I saw you first.
Yeah, well, I guess it's a desire. I'm between the hospital and Kendall Court. And in suburbia, it looks like your basic service area is more in the sort of the center of the city. Suburbia is one area that's ripe for highly functional public transportation. It would be really nice to get from our area down to the library and Wall Street and some of the area, without having to drive. So I'm hopeful that at some point that will happen. And also, are there shuttles that bring people from the Waypoint to some of the transit hubs, to South Norwalk train station? Or do people have to call specifically? Because I'm just thinking there are a lot of working people in some of these big apartment complexes. And if there was like a regular shuttle loop that people could take, I'm just curious about that.
There is, you have the number 10 highlighted there. And I think it's the Norwalk Hospital Belden commuter shuttle there.
Yeah, I think all of these go past Waypoint. Obviously, I think Audrey's comment pertains to other complexes as well. I mean, sorry, go ahead, Matt.
No, it's okay. Yeah, I mean, between the routes that you see on the left there, that's the extent at which we serve the city. At a Waypoint, we do go on, that's West Avenue. But yeah, that's kind of where we are.
How can we expand your range? Is it appealing to our state legislators?
I did tell you I'm the finance guy, and so far we have flat funding to last year at a time of pretty crazy inflation. So there are some limitations. But yeah, I mean, that's really what it comes down to. We have a lot of ambitions. The state did just ask us for a lot of enhancement plans, and we've submitted that. We want to increase the frequency. We want to increase some of the service on the weekend. We'd love to expand our zone. It's a fine balance with the wheels to you. You don't want the wait time more than really 8 or 9 minutes. But you want to try and serve as much as you can. So once the wait time, and we're seeing a little bit in Westport in the evenings, the wait times are closer to 10 minutes, and we're debating whether or not to put a shuttle out there. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I know there's some there's interest in increasing our funding. I don't know the right answer for you. I mean, the city of Norwalk gives us a piece. They've been very supportive. We've had some debt to kind of climb out of, which we're almost there. I don't know the right answer. I know that the legislators are supportive of public transit. We haven't seen a cut. We're told that we will get a little funding increase. So it all comes down to money. But yeah, I mean, if you want to remind them that you support public transit, that helps.
Thanks, Matt. We got just a couple minutes left and 3 hands. So go ahead, Colin, make it quick.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the overall overview of what you do. I also am curious about the wheels to you and your future designs, but I think your service area is pretty spot on at the moment. And even though I live just outside of it, I've been able to effectively use the service from my office to my home area. So that's worked well. But my biggest gripe as a person that's used the service is that it doesn't run all week. So, you know, I did catch that you said you launched it as an entertainment thing, but I was hoping that you have future plans to expand it to a full week service and maybe run mornings and evenings for people that can avail themselves of the service within the service area, because I've been very happy with it. The rate's great. The driver's been pretty good, and it's worked out well for me when I've been able to use it. But just on a selfish personal note, you know, I ride my bike to work. I'm here at the office now. It's raining outside. I wasn't planning on the rain. I'd love to jump on a wheels to you and go home, but you only run like Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So I'm stuck being wet, but thank you.
Yeah, I hear you. So one of the challenges that we have is that with our funding, we're funded, you know, certain programs, one of which is the fixed route system. And so we have to be careful that our Wheels to You, which is a new initiative, doesn't, you know, cannibalize those rides. So that's one of the limitations in terms of just throwing the service out there some of the other days of the week. It was intended, you know, for the entertainment zone, for the mall, for the restaurants. We certainly like the idea. We want to do it. We just have to be very careful until we have a better agreement with the state. We got to be very careful not to kind of step on some of our traditional services. So I don't know where the happy medium is. It is evolving, but I certainly appreciate that feedback, and we need that input because it helps us. So yeah, for now, unfortunately, I can't make any promises, but we definitely want to expand it. So I will we'll discuss that internally.
Yeah, and just as a really quick follow-up, I have tried taking the actual fixed route service to the office before, since I can catch a stop like pretty much across the street from my house, but it takes me about an hour to get here from over by where Lily and August live. So I can walk it in about 45 minutes. So it's very inefficient to do the fixed route service for me to get to and from the office. So I tried.
Where do you work?
What's that?
Where do you work?
I work at the Sono train station. My office is right adjacent to it in a converted building.
What part of town do you live in?
I live on West Rocks.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, yeah, there's certainly limitations with our fixed route system, so that's good to know. I've heard now 2 or 3 of these instances where the system would technically take longer than walking. So yeah,
it's a 3 mile walk too. So I mean, it's not a short walk. Anyway, I've taken enough time, and I yield to other people.
I got what you're saying. I hear you, and yeah, we'll see what we can do at some point. Let's hope we can blend in some more of this public transit during the week.
Well, thanks, Colin. Thanks, Matt. Unfortunately, if we want to get to everything on the agenda, I have to cut it off here. We do have plans to bring the transit district back. Matt is currently the acting CEO because Kimberly Morton, the CEO, is out, but we're hoping to get her to one of our future meetings. So save your questions, or if you want to send them to me, I can forward them to Matt. I can connect you with Matt over email as well.
Tanner, could people put them in the chat, and could Matt answer them after the meeting?
Yes, or even during the meeting if you want to answer them asynchronously. Delene, did you have any luck turning the chat on?
It should be on.
I don't see the option on my end. Does anybody see the chat option? Sounds like most people don't.
I see Q&A, but not chat.
I guess Q&A could work, but I don't know if Matt will have privileges to answer the Q&A. Can you promote Matt to whatever he needs to be in order to answer questions?
Yep.
Cool. Let's give that a shot. We've never done this before, but we'll give it a shot. If you have a question for Matt, put it in the Q&A. Just type it in, That way we can move on the agenda. Matt, hopefully you'll have the technical capacity to answer these questions, and we'll give it a shot.
Tanner, I don't think that we can type in questions right now.
Delene, can you help out?
Yeah, give me one sec.
All right, let's circle back on that after the next agenda item. If you don't mind sitting around, Matt. Thanks. So we'll move on to Garrett from TMP. We've got 15, now 12 minutes for Garrett to walk us through this grant application.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, Tanner. Good evening, everyone. Garrett Bilella, Assistant Director for Transportation, Mobility, and Parking. And I am here before you tonight to talk about 3 exciting grant-funded projects that we're putting together applications for. So these projects are through a program called LOTSIP, which is a local transportation capital improvement program that's going to be issued annually for the region. The projects are all 100% state funded for construction, and we wanted to introduce those projects to you tonight and ask for your support and potentially letters of support to include within the grant applications. So I'll ask Greg to share his screen, and if he can throw up Google Maps. So the way our general approach to come up with some of these projects has been, we've been looking through various transportation plans that have been done in the past. The Norwalk Bikeway and Pedestrian Master Plan is a really great example where it identifies these tier 1, these top corridors in the city that also have quite a large crash history. So we really started to pull those plans off the shelf, look at what those top 10 corridors are. When we did the application for West Rock Road sidewalks, that was one of the corridors identified within the study. Calf Pasture Beach is another corridor that was introduced in the study. And the intersection you see here, Gregory Boulevard, Marvin Street, Calf Pasture Street, it should come as no surprise that we're here before you looking at some proposed improvements to this location. So I think that the city has a desire to look at like a true modern roundabout at many locations within the city. And I should take a brief second to share some recent data that's come out of CONDOT. So CONDOT had recently done a study of 5 roundabouts on state roadways, and they're seeing really astonishing numbers. So they looked at conversions of traditional intersections to roundabouts, and I think the numbers are an 81% reduction in severe crashes and 49% reduction in overall crashes. So we know that Norwalk, we really want it to be a Vision Zero city. We want to reduce serious and fatal crashes. And one of the ways to do that is going to be introduce roundabouts wherever feasible, because they have such a profound effect. So our first grant application that's before you tonight is really to formalize what exists as a traffic circle today. It has a somewhat confusing operation. There's yield control within the circle, yielding to drivers that are entering the circle, which is somewhat unconventional and opposite the operations of a true modern roundabout. Also at this location, it's been brought before the Traffic Authority in the past, and the Bike Walk Commission has brought it up on numerous occasions. But it's just not the intersection that you want to have as a gateway to your beach. You can see from the aerial, there's not great deflection. Speeds entering are higher. It really lacks pedestrian accommodations on all sides, and it necessarily isn't really bicycle friendly. So we're putting together an application. We anticipate this project will be about $1.5 million. And it's not only to look at the intersection where the monument is, but also to look at the intersection of Calf Pasture Beach Road and Marvin Street. And, we've walked the street, we've talked to some neighbors. We had a consultant draft a couple concepts, which we'd like to share with the community shortly. But we think this could potentially be either dual roundabouts, or this intersection can be narrowed and improved a little bit to make it more pedestrian friendly and reduce some of the speed. So we're moving forward with that concept as part of the LOTSIP. As part of this year's capital budget, $100,000 was approved to actually fully design this intersection. So we anticipate with the LOTSIP application, we'll be able to fully fund the design and have a shovel-ready project. And we're currently in the process of getting a consultant through our on-call contract to finish the design of this project. And the first task that they'll be issued is really to get a community meeting together and share the 2 concepts that I've shared with you tonight. so that the community can weigh in and ultimately decide the direction this project moves in. But we think it's a really great application. It really fits the criteria of the program, which is looking for those shovel-ready projects. And it's really important from our perspective is to make sure that where we have traffic circles and maybe roundabout-ish type intersections, to make sure they fully function and as well functioning roundabouts, so that we can get drivers more familiar with roundabouts and that they can start to see really see some of the benefits. So that's the first project I wanted to share with you. I think what I'll do is I'll go through all three of them, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. So the second project we're looking at is centered around Norwalk Community College. So another one of those priority corridors in the Bikeway and Pedestrian plan was Richards Avenue. And it really is such a critical corridor. It connects the commercial Route 1 corridor. It also connects, it's in the center of that corridor is Norwalk Community College. There's several houses of worship and institutions along the roadway. And then it also connects the West Norwalk neighborhood. So our department has invested pretty significantly over the past couple of years into improvements on Richards Avenue. Greg will speak a little bit more on it tonight. But essentially, we'll have a complete and dedicated bike facility, bike lane on Richards Avenue, with the exception of through the center of this campus, which is a little bit ironic. We've also been reviewing several business and developer applications and looking at filling some of the sidewalk gaps to the immediate north and south of the college. One that we recently worked a partnership with is the cemetery to the north, and we're partnering with them to basically build sidewalks that connect to the community college on the westerly side of Richards Avenue, just a short distance north of the college. And also another investment by the city DPW is to improve the West Cedar Street Bridge. So it's a very narrow bridge today. It's about 1,000 feet from the campus, but it's going to be improved so there's a full 2 travel lanes in each direction. And we anticipate it will improve transportation mobility around the college. But with all of these improvements, it really just highlights the challenges we have at the college. So we have that disconnected bike network. One of the challenges, what I really observed firsthand, is when you're driving south down Richards Avenue, is you just all of a sudden enter the campus, and you're driving through a residential section of the roadway with a cemetery on one side. There's not a lot of access, so you tend to see somewhat higher speeds here, and then you're coming around the corner, and then you're right into the campus. So one of the challenges but opportunities we see is with what we're calling a complete streets or a streetscape project that encompasses the entire campus, is to really change and create a gateway to the campus and to create streetscape and to let drivers know that they're entering a really highly pedestrian area. So we see that as an opportunity. Some of the other challenges and that we look to address with the grant are the signalized intersection of West Cedar and Richards Avenue. And it is at the end of its useful life. It is somewhat antiquated, and through the screening processes, we really see that could be a great location for a fully functioning roundabout, which would also serve as a gateway to the college on the south end and also help to calm traffic as it approaches the campus. Just another opportunity. So we started to look at all of these items and compile them into just one massive grant. One of the things we're looking to do to connect the north and south of the campus, I mentioned we'll have bike lanes to both the north and south, is looking at how we can do like a multi-use path that extends through the campus on both sides of the roadway to take cyclists off the street. And then those function really well with roundabouts. So that's our second application. It's really consistent with the Plan of Conservation and Development, which really looks at how we can build and strengthen connectivity to the college. And then it's also consistent with the future complete streets policies, which we're about to embark on. The last grant that we're looking at is an extension of the Norwalk River Valley Trail. So the NRVT committee has been working closely with the city, looking to advance an application to the state to complete one of the spurs. So this spur would be basically a 1,000-foot section of the trail that would connect the Will Walk, which is under construction and soon to be finished, to Glover Avenue, and that really, really high density development. So while it's a relatively short section of trail, there are some challenges. It has to go under Gristmill Road and a bridge and utilize one of the bays of that bridge that's free and available, and will require some retaining walls in sections, some sections of boardwalk. It will require some fencing to separate users of the trail from the railroad. So we're looking at approximately $1 million grant application to finish that section of the trail, to make sure it's at least 10 feet and paved all the way. And we think this will really complement the development that's happened on Glover Avenue. Particularly, there's plans to finalize the bike lanes on that section, and all of that will connect to the new train station under construction. So it's a really exciting project, another opportunity for us to work on the trail. But that's just really a snapshot of 3 grants that we're looking to do, and with a deadline of October 7th. So we should have some good news to share shortly after they're submitted. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
So before we get to the questions, we are running short on time again. Delene, have you made any progress on the Q&A?
I don't think I could turn it on because it must be off in the settings, and once the meeting is started, I can't go.
Gotcha.
I can't go back.
Okay, well, we'll try that again for the next meeting then, to have the Q&A and the chat on.
Absolutely.
Okay, for this meeting though, let's take the 2 questions that we've got already. Actually, Colin, if you don't mind, since you had the chance to ask a question already, we'll start with Judd. And then I think we'll move to the next agenda item. Go ahead, Judd.
Hi, Garrett. I just wanted to mention at Ludlow Circle, if you're coming out of Calf Pasture Beach, you're making a left onto Marvin and entering the circle. There's no yield sign there, and there's also no yield sign that I know for the traffic coming, I'm going to guess south on I can't think of the main road there, on Gregory. And I've had a couple of close calls on a bicycle there. So I'm coming, I think, east on Marvin, entering the circle. There's no yield sign, and then there's no yield sign on Gregory Boulevard. So I just wanted to mention that. Maybe you could look at it. I know you have big plans for it, but maybe in the meantime, it might make it a bit safer.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges is, I think you're certainly right. The reason why we see such benefits from roundabouts is because they really provide that yield control and slow speeds entering the circle, and that has a profound effect on the rate of crashes and also their severity. So I think that's exactly why we wanted to look at this intersection. I can tell you from the existing configurations, it's somewhat challenging because you can swap out signs tomorrow, but without the geometric improvements that slow people down and make drivers more aware as they enter the intersection, it might still not work to the desired effect. So that's why we wanted to look at this holistically. One of the things I didn't have a chance to mention about, because of the existing configuration of this intersection, and I mentioned we're going to have shovel-ready design plans, but we anticipate this being potentially a really quick project. The roundabout would be designed to preserve a lot of the pavement that's out there already. And we think we can make this a really low cost, high benefit roundabout project. So I definitely hear you and appreciate your concerns.
Thanks. Just like we did for the last item, if you have other questions, go ahead and send them to me, and I'll forward them and start the discussion with Garrett. Before we move on though, Garrett, what does the timeline look like for this grant application? Are you going to be able to show us any more details, like for example, mock-ups of the intersections before we apply for the grant?
So we're actually working on those right now. So we're putting together those concepts. So they aren't ready at the moment, but I'd be happy to share them once they're available. So by the end of the week, we'll have some really fleshed out concepts and some cost estimates to go with them. But we'd be happy to share them at a later date.
Gotcha. And then what's the deadline that we would need to submit a letter of support by?
If you could submit it by Friday, so we intend to submit the grant application by 4 p.m. is the deadline on Friday.
On this Friday?
Yes.
So is there any chance we'll be able to see those designs before we submit the letter of support?
Yeah, absolutely. I can share the concepts with you as soon as we have them.
Gotcha. Okay.
So we should, we're working with the consultant, so they should have their concepts to us either late tomorrow or early Wednesday, the ones that will be submitted with the grant.
Gotcha. Okay, a question then that I want to put to the commissioners. I think in a perfect world where we had more time, I think it would be cool if all the commissioners could see the actual designs and provide feedback on them. Before, ideally, before we write the letter of support. The timeline here is pretty tight. In theory, we could organize a special meeting if people have time and if TMP is comfortable with that. But I don't know if either of those are the case. Garrett, what do you think?
So I would suggest, I know it's a really tight timeline. You know, we've had very limited resources and a lot of grants before us, but if like a general endorsement of the concept and the plan, and then we can follow, we'd be more than happy to follow up once the actual plans are conceptualized and drafted.
Gotcha. Okay. Then let's do that. I think then we should make a motion. I can't remember if I can make the motion or not. But to, at the very least, you know, write a letter in support of the kinds of things that we want to see come out of this project, right? I think we and TMP are in agreement about the end goals. In terms of the actual infrastructure that gets built, we might, you know, have nitpicky opinions about exactly the different elements to include. But
and if I could clarify too, Tanner, yeah. So these will just be really high level concepts with at this stage of a grant opportunity. You know, should they be funded, there will be multiple opportunities to comment, and you know that's where we'll kind of finesse and work at all the finer details of the plans. But you know, I think the applications, the way they're framed for Westcog are just very general, very high level. You know, we don't know what the exact size or shape of the roundabout will be. For example, for Norwalk Community College, and we have to run, you know, turning templates and vehicle
so that's
movements
the kind of work
through those intersections. But
after the grant is awarded.
Yeah, I think just right now, these are just general concepts, and you know, we cross our fingers and hope we'll get funding, and then you know we'd be able to come back to you with much more concrete plans.
Gotcha. Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to write a letter of support for these three. Are they three separate applications?
Yes, yeah, there'll be three separate applications. Yeah, and we're happy to provide you like some narrative. Sure. For the drafts to make it easier for you, which you could share with the team.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to support the three proposals presented by the city for the LOTSIP grants in concept.
Thanks, Colin. Do I have a second?
I second, Tanner. Christine.
Thanks, Christine. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. I think that's 5 of us. It's the 5 of us that are here, and that's a majority. So, and it's unanimous. So thank you, everybody. Thanks, Garrett, for coming.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
We'll move to the next item, which is the chair's report from me. I'll go as quick as I can. Although before I start, I want to acknowledge, thanks again, Matt Pence, for coming. Sorry we couldn't get the Q&A to work. I will forward you whatever questions I get and connect you with whomever is interested in connecting. And we look forward to having either you or Kimberly back.
Good, thank you, Tanner.
All right, thanks again. Okay, so first thing on the chair's report is the Sustainable Streets Happy Hour. This is a happy hour that I organized with some of you and some people who aren't here, kind of adjacent to the commission's work. We had a great turnout. We had over 50 people show up to just like get to know each other. The idea here was to help people who were interested in biking, walking, public transportation, and safe streets to meet each other, to make connections, and to ideally get a core group of people that we can sustain like a recurring happy hour maybe every month. And we definitely hit that. We got a great turnout. So I'm gonna plan another one. We don't have a date nailed down, but we're looking at the end of October. So it'll be before the next commission meeting. Keep an eye out. Bug me if you don't hear from me about that. Number 2, National Night Out. We had a booth that it was kind of 2 booths. It was 2 tables that we staffed at the National Night Out, which is a police department event that they do every fall. Kudos to, let's see, who all was there? A lot of people were there. Julia was there. Ben Handpeter was there. Sherry, who I don't think is in the meeting today, was there. Judd was there. Who else was there that I'm forgetting? I saw Carly there, actually. Thank you for coming, Carly. I think she was at her own booth. But thanks everybody for coming. We gave away all the swag we brought, which was awesome. We gave away bike helmets. We gave away bags. We gave away, I guess we didn't have bottles. The bottles haven't come in yet. And we collected a lot of emails. And Emily, did I say Emily? Because I think you were the one taking down emails, right? So thank you for coming. The next thing on there is the bike and car lane measurements. I connected recently with dang it, I'm blanking on his name. A longtime bike advocate here in Norwalk, Peter Libre, who was actually on the first go around of the Bike Walk Commission back when it was a task force. And we went out and did a little project. We measured the lane widths, both the car lane and the bike lane on every single street in Norwalk that has a bike lane. To gather some data, we found that a lot of the lanes are 5 feet wide, a lot of bike lanes, some of them are 4.5. On a lot of the streets that have bike lanes, we have a 10-foot lane or a 10.5-foot lane. So I want to give props to Garrett and Jim, who made that happen when they got here to Norwalk to ensure that we could have a 10-foot travel lane or a 10-foot car lane as kind of as a right. So thank you for that. Next thing, we have a vacancy in the city right now for the Chief of Operations and Public Works. The former person who was in that position, Anthony Carr, stepped down, and so it's currently vacant. The city is hiring. Last time there was a vacancy for a position, it was actually the director of TMP, and we submitted some questions that were used for the application or for the interview process for that role. Unfortunately, we can't deliberate on those questions in this public meeting because then they would be public and that would defeat the purpose of an interview question. So I just wanted to let you all know that I'm going to be compiling some questions. If you have ideas, feel free to send them to me and I'm going to pass them along to the hiring committee at the city so that we can be part of that process for making sure we have a solid new chair of operations and public works. Bike friendly communities application, that's the next thing. I met with a group of a few of you to work on the bike friendly communities application. We made some progress answering some of the questions. We've got a big Google Doc where people are kind of working asynchronously. Thanks in particular to Phil, who came to that and helped move that process along. I think Julia was also there, Emily was there. Thank you all. I did have a question for either Greg or Garrett. At what point should we start involving somebody from TMP and who do you think it will be?
Hey,
Yeah.
Tim. Oh, sorry, Garrett, go ahead.
No, Greg, you take it.
No, I was just gonna say, I know there's a lot of data heavy, analytics that need to go into the actual application, and Kyle Benjamin is our traffic analyst, but it'll be probably a few of us that'll be working on it. So I will probably be working on it with him. So the two of us between Kyle and myself will definitely be kind of carrying the load for the city to complete the application once you folks on the Bike Walk Commission have kind of finished your portion of that application.
Okay, so we'll keep working then on the parts that we can do, and then we'll loop you in once we get close to the end.
Okay. Yeah, just keep me and just CC me on everything, and we'll take it from there once you guys are done.
Okay, sounds like a plan. I also met with the working group for the strategic plan. In the past, before I was the chair, under Nancy, who was the previous chair, Nancy did a great job of putting together a strategic plan, which was a set of goals and kind of milestones along the way to those goals every year. I haven't yet done that, even though I've been the chair now for over a year. And so I put together this working group to try and define a more definite strategic plan. I met with a group of people and we started brainstorming. We don't have anything concrete yet. And so I think we're going to hold another meeting, or at least I'm going to continue taking input. If anybody is interested in being part of that process, whether or not you want to attend another meeting or not, let me know. Feel free to put your hand up now or send me an email and I'll make sure to get you included in that. Next thing is books to give away. Yeah, this is the last thing. This is an idea actually that Audrey gave me. Thank you, Audrey. For those of you who don't know, we have a little bit of a budget that the city gives us. We have $10,000 a year. And we used just about all of it last year. We used it to buy the swag that we give away at events. We used it to sponsor Vanessa Valadares, who's the principal engineer for the city and now the acting chief of public works and operations, to go with me to a conference on walkability, which was excellent. And we've used it in the past also to buy a little bit of infrastructure, some stanchions and some bike racks that have gotten some use. One idea that Audrey gave me is that we could use some of our budget to buy a bunch of books. I think actually we have. Judd, don't you have, you used to give away a bunch of books. Were they bought with commission budget?
Most of the time.
Most of the time. So Audrey suggested that we do that again. And in particular, the timing right now is right, that if we decided on it right now, we could give them out as Christmas gifts to members of the city, elected officials, etc. Audrey suggested there's a book that's written by the author of Strong Towns, Chuck Marone that's called Confessions of a Recovering Engineer. That's all about traffic engineering in the United States and how it's led to the transportation environment that we have today and how to reform it. It's an excellent read. Audrey's called it the book of the year. I think I would agree. So that's one idea. There's also a book that came out, I think last year, called Curbing Traffic. The subtitle is called The Case for Fewer Cars in Our Lives. That's written by a couple who's from Canada who moved to the Netherlands and experienced all the benefits of living in a Dutch city where there are very few cars. So I think those are two ideas. I'd entertain other ideas, but I'd also entertain any feedback, reactions you have, especially commissioners, since you're voting, as to whether you think that we should spend commission budget on buying, I don't know, a dozen, maybe 2 dozen books and giving them to people in the city.
Hey, Tanner, is that Curbing Traffic? Is that the Not Just Bikes guy?
It is not. It's by Melissa and Chris Bruntlett. They run an agency called Modacity. Although Not Just Bikes, if you haven't heard of that, you should look it up. It's a YouTube channel. Any thoughts from commissioners or from others about this idea?
Tanner, I think we might be better off spending the money like we did with Vanessa.
Okay.
You know, to send to a conference or something like that.
So in the case of the conference, it ended up being about 1/3 of our yearly budget. To send 2 people, it was about $3,500. With the books, we could get the books for, you know, $15 a piece, maybe $10 a piece. So we're talking about 2 very different amounts of money.
Yeah, my experience having given away dozens of books on the subject over the last 7 or 8 years is, I don't think once I heard back from anyone like, that was a great book, thank you so much, I read the whole thing. So,
well, I will say that one of the things that I was able to talk to Vanessa about, to talk her into going to this conference, is that she had the book that you gave her on her shelf.
had she read it?
I think she said she had.
Okay.
But even if she hadn't, like, it was enough to, because the conference, for those of you who are not following, the conference was taught by the same guy who wrote the book that Judd was giving out. The book is called Walkable City. It's by Jeff Speck. If you haven't read the book, it's a great book. Go pick it up or ask Judd for a copy. He might not have one, but he'll buy you one.
I don't have any more extras. I just have one. So
anyway, I saw another hand up, but then the hand disappeared.
That was me.
Oh, Ben,
I was just going to echo Judd's point that it's probably helpful to have a captive audience. I was going to suggest, I don't know if you can give away specific audiobooks, if that's a thing. I personally have a much easier time sticking with an audiobook because I can do that while I'm doing other stuff. I don't know if anyone else has a similar experience to that.
I can definitely relate. I think gifting an audiobook, though, is a little bit harder. You could give them like a Walkman with with the tape of the book on it.
Yeah.
With a cassette.
With a cassette in there. Anyway, any other thoughts on this topic? If nobody else is feeling strongly, I probably won't go forward with it. Audrey, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I feel strongly that if we are able to pass along important information, it may be in the form of a written book, and hopefully people will take a look at it. I know the book, The Confessions of a Recovering Engineer, is actually an easy read and it's so profound. It would be terrific for our engineers and for all of us to be on the same page with some of this stuff. I know there's complete streets, but there's strong towns too. So anyway, I just feel strongly about it, but I'm not a commissioner, so I can't make the decision.
Well, thanks, Audrey. And I'm the chair, so I don't think I can make a motion.
How about, yeah, I'll make a motion that we buy a dozen of those books. I have not read it, and Audrey, if it's an easy read, maybe it's more likely to be read. And because of the title, if we gave it to the traffic engineers within city of Norwalk, maybe they would pay more attention to it than a book titled Walkable Cities or something like that. So I'm going to guess, you know, we could, I don't know how much that book costs on Amazon, but it's probably not a huge amount.
I mean, I can look that up right now, but it sounds like that was an official motion. So do I have
Yes, it is. I make a motion to buy a dozen.
I'll second it.
Thanks, Colin. All in favor? All right, we're unanimous again. Thanks. Like I said, I imagine it's somewhere around $15. So 15 times 12 is 180. So that
When I was doing this, I would buy used books often.
yeah, that's a good point.
I was going to ask if we know if they're available at the library or not. It would be nice to donate copies to the library
That's a
so
great
that they're
point.
available to everyone. But I can make a note to bring that up later too.
No, I think it's a great point. That it was a good time to bring it up. Audrey, that you seem like somebody who would know. Is that book at the library?
I don't know, but I can check with Sherelle Harris. She'll get us whatever we want.
Ben might know. Ben,
And
go
if we
ahead.
like that book, I have another great one in the wings.
Ben, go ahead.
I don't know. I was just gonna ask another question if it could be ordered through a local bookstore instead of off Amazon or something.
That's another good point. Unfortunately, we lack a good bookstore in Norwalk.
I know it's not Norwalk, but Elm Street Books in New Canaan, you can order stuff to pick up, and they have a pretty big selection online if you want to do it that way.
Okay.
Or at least, I've biked there, which is kind of fun. Local-ish.
That's a good point. Judd, do you think we need a separate motion to change where we're going to buy the books? Or
Let's make a motion. I'll make a motion that we purchase the 12 books from a local brick and mortar retailer, either Elm Street Books or even the only other bookstore I know is Barnes and Noble over in Westport. Norwalk, I don't think has a single bookstore at this time.
Barrett in downtown Darien is pretty good too.
Okay.
Noted. Thanks, Brian.
So I've made that motion.
Yeah, I'll entertain a second. Emily, thanks for seconding. Collins are also voting in favor. I'll vote in favor. Christine, thank you. Awesome. Okay, then I will work on that, and we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is Greg. Greg, you got 10 minutes, and then we got 10 minutes for questions. Greg's always.
All right, sounds good. We're going to roll right through this.
ahead.
So Connecticut Community Connectivity Grant, since we received the funding from DOT for the grant, we are now looking to advance the construction of the overall project that we've been talking about for so long. So we're very excited about that. One of the first components for the overall project is the furnishing and in the installation of the required and necessary signage as part of the overall project. We're looking at about 226 signs over about 100 signposts. So it's a pretty labor intensive job to do. So we decided to, put it out to bid and bring in roadway construction company to install the signage, because it would be a large burden on, our local crew to put in that amount of signage. So it closed last week, and we received one bid to finish and furnish and install the signage that is needed for the east-west and north-south bike route. And it's actually going on the Public Works Committee agenda for tomorrow night for authorization. And we're planning on that installation for the signage to be completed over the winter time, as opposed to usual roadway construction, which has to close up shop during the winter time. Installing signage can usually be done over the winter time, as long as the temperature is, is accessible to get and dig up the ground to put the signs in. So another item we're also bringing forward into the Public Works Committee agenda for tomorrow night is for the committee to amend our city striping contract with safety markings to increase the amount of the contract from the funding we received. By utilizing our contract, it allows us to get the lowest bid for striping, as if we would, compared to as if we put it out for just bid for, as one single project. So, if anyone from the commission would like to show up and, kind of show the support for the two items, that we're putting on the agenda for tomorrow night for the connectivity grant, we encourage you to attend during the public input segment, and just kind of throw your support out there for the overall project. And this one just includes the striping and the signage portion of it, which is two of the main components of the overall project that we've been talking about for so long.
Greg, let me just underline that really quick. For those of you who aren't familiar, if you go to norwalkct.org/meetings, you get to this page right here, which has every public meeting that the city has. You're talking about the Public Works Committee right here. Is that right?
Correct. Yep.
So that's tomorrow night at 7 p.m. You can do it on Zoom. You can do it on YouTube, but if you're on Zoom, you can give public comment. If you click here, you get the agenda, which
It's
is right
very
there.
long.
All right, that's it. Go ahead, Greg.
All right, thank you. And just continuing, just to kind of take it another step further, once, hopefully that we are authorized and, it gets approved to kind of, increase our striping budget and our contract. We are coordinating with our contracting vendor, striping contract vendor, safety markings to complete the overall striping project. The safety markings, we're kind of at the mercy at their schedule. They're pretty much the largest vendor in the state that performs striping. They practically have every municipality in Fairfield County, and they also are the DOT contractor for striping on all state roads as well, and including highways. So they are very busy right now. So we are committed to getting as much done as possible before the end of the year. As you all know, it's getting colder out right now. So we can't stripe during the winter time. So we're coordinating with them on a daily basis and trying to get as much, get them scheduled and get as much done of the connectivity grant as possible. And one of the first areas that we definitely want to target, and we were in coordination with them right now to get done, is Route 136 4 Point Street in Van Zant, which I don't know if any of you noticed were recently milled and paved. Layouts were out last week. We have to go back out and make some minor adjustments to it because the DOT is doing their portion, and then our portion, which is a lot of symbols and bike boxes, will be completed upon DOT's completion. So we're kind of close coordination with them, and we're hopeful, to have that completed, in the near future, because that's going to kind of be one of the highlights of this project is 4 Point Street, and the fact that it has fresh pavement, and we'd love to see fresh striping and symbols, and kind of, really display not only for the city but also the state as well, to kind of show, kind of what we're looking at for the future, for other areas around the city as well. And this will kind of showcase that going forward. So we're very excited about that. Anybody have any questions on that?
Ben, go ahead.
Yeah, just to clarify, I know that that whole area was just milled and paved. So is the layout changing at all, or is it just getting a fresh coat?
No, the layout is changing. So we're putting in bi-directional bike lanes continuing on 4 Point Street. Right now, it terminates at the intersection at Seaview Avenue. So we're looking, our designs, which have already been approved by DOT, is to include bike lanes all the way through 4 Point Street up to the intersection at Van Zant Street.
Okay. Is anything on the bridge itself changing?
No, nothing on the bridge. No, that was not repaved over the bridge. That stays the same. But the bike lanes will continue from Water Street all the way to Van Zant.
Gotcha. And the bridge is strict under the purview of state DOT, right?
Correct. Yes. Well, the whole roadway it's a state route, but we've worked closely with them, and they've approved our design, and they did their striping based on our plans, and we've worked closely with them for the last year and a half to get this approved and completed.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I know that the bridge wasn't really in scope since it already had the lanes,
Right.
but since I'm talking.
And one other component of this as well, Ben, which is a first for the city, is the implementation of green pavement as well. And also, that is very big coming through this area where it's pretty heavily traveled, and really make the facility stand out much more than just a plain striped white, bike facilities.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. I see people riding on the sidewalks over the bridge all the time, unfortunately, just because cars are flying through there so fast and so many lanes of traffic. But again, I know there wasn't much to be done in this particular case, but I can dream.
Right.
One step at a time. We got two other questions. Let's keep moving along though. Christine?
Yes.
Yeah, quickly, Greg, thanks. I mentioned this before, and I don't know if anything can be done, but when a cyclist or a pedestrian comes out of that entrance right there,
at Veterans Park?
And then making a left, there's nothing, you like to come out there and make a left. like on a
No,
bicycle.
right.
It's a
No,
little,
we agree, and it's definitely a tough turn to make, and, it's a tough turn for vehicles to make, quite frankly, not only for a vehicle, but extremely for a cyclist, but as part of this project, unfortunately, there's just not the funding to do an improvement such as that at this moment in time, but it's definitely an area that, needs to be looked at for future projects.
Thanks. Go ahead, Judd.
Yep. Greg, the green paint, is that for bike boxes at the intersection?
Correct, bike boxes, and also we are cat tracking through the actual intersection itself, through Seaview Avenue to across 4 Point Street, and the east approach lane, across Seaview Avenue.
When you say cat track, you mean like a dashed line essentially?
Yeah, dash line with green pavement in
Cool.
between the bike lane points, in between the dash bike lane extension lines.
Greg, at Goldstein Place down there in the lower left,
Yep.
I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years ago, I'm not sure if you were here. There was heavy traffic stopped on the bridge. Two cyclists were heading from East Norwalk to South Norwalk, and someone took a left turn into Goldstein Place and hit both of them. I don't know if you have green paint for that intersection, but if it's not too late, you might mention that.
We don't have it in our plans right now, but it's definitely, we can certainly look at that, for DOTs. The thing is, it's
right.
not really a high volume road, so we would have to, coordinate with DOT and get their approval as well and see how we can, we're definitely cat tracking it through that intersection. I'm sorry, just putting a dotted extension line through.
Right.
To make drivers aware, but as far as cat tracks, we don't have that in this plan as of right now, but we'll have to take a look at that for future. Now, especially we have FHWA approval for the implementation of green pavement.
So the dashed lines you have there now are not what you're calling cat tracks?
No.
Okay, I see.
No. So basically think of a dotted extension line 5 feet on the other side with green pavement in between the two white lines.
I see.
That's a cat track.
Okay.
So it sticks out more for turning vehicles.
So let's keep rolling. We've got through one of Greg's 8 agenda items, and I think we're getting close to out of time.
All right, I'm just gonna roll through. So recently, West Rocks Road paving and striping. Recently, the water company repaved the segment of West Rocks Road from between St. Mary's and Butternut Lane. It's approximately 0.8 miles. And the utility company, to our surprise, was able to get out there and get their paving completed this year. We did receive an email from Tanner and Peter for the new pavement, and basically, we appreciate Tanner for you guys going out there and notifying us. And we always intended on installing bike lanes throughout the entirety of the corridor on West Rocks between Route 7, Main Ave, and all the way to Route 1. And that includes France Street and Park Ave. And luckily for this segment, we kind of already basically had a preliminary plan in place to stripe bike lanes. And once we were notified of the pavement, we pretty much took those preliminary concept plans that we had and we just advanced them. So that saved us some time to act quickly and kind of coordinate, and finalize the striping, which kind of saved us some time. And moving forward, we're working with DPW to kind of work through those communication issues between TMP and DPW, especially on an occasion like this where it wasn't the city that did the paving, where it was the utility project. And once they were completed, they oversaw the paving as part of their project after they dug up the road. So we're improving that communication between the two departments, and Jim and Garrett are constantly meeting with DPW to fix those communications, such as an occasion such as this. But the good news is we do have a striping plan in place later this week. Safety markings and TMP will be out later this week laying out the new striping plan. That includes 10-foot travel lanes and in both directions. The easterly curb will have a continuous 6-foot bike lane. And that will also include a 6-inch edge line as compared to a 4-inch edge line. And we're kind of using it as a pilot a little bit to kind of see if that provides a little bit of a safer feel for cyclists and kind of see if it just provides better visuals as well for vehicles and for cyclists riding against a 6-foot edge line as opposed to a 4-inch. So we'd love to see how that kind of works out. And then on the westerly curb, the cross sections, yes, they vary along this segment of West Rocks, but we were able to accommodate on the westerly curb to put in a 2-foot buffer for pretty much a majority of the length of the newly paved section along the vehicle travel lane where it could be accommodated. What's that?
When you say the westerly curve, you're talking about this northern section of the area?
No, so I'm talking about on West Rocks on the western side on the southern, if you were traveling south on West.
Oh,
Rocks.
I see.
Yeah.
So the southbound side.
So yeah, so the south, correct. Yep. So we implemented that 2-foot buffer for majority of the newly paved section where it could be accommodated. We followed NACTO guidelines for those buffers, and we had a lot of thought that went into where the buffers should be placed, especially some of the wider areas were close to 40 feet wide. So we definitely had that room to accommodate a buffer. And then there were areas, especially in front of the school, where there was on-street parking as well during pickup and drop-off time. So we still, in those areas, wanted to keep, we had the room, plenty of room to have on-street parking, a buffer, and a bike lane as well. So we were able to keep that 2-foot buffer in that area. And there was a lot of back and forth, kind of planning on and thought that was put into where should we put the buffer, and to have a continuous, more comfortable feel for the cyclist. The buffer is in between the vehicle travel lane and the bike lane, which just provides a better flow of the bike lane throughout the entirety of the corridor. And it will tie into the portion that was completed last year as well. And then in the early springtime of 2023 next year, the rest of West Rocks Road from Butternut to Route 7 is planned to be paved as well. And TMP and DPW, we're working together to improve, to make those improvements and keep the same flow all the way up to, for the rest of West Rocks Road. And, the northerly section, there is some challenges that we'll have to address, and we'll have to look at and take a closer look at, only because it does get a little, the cross sections, kind of narrow into, nearly 26 feet in some of those sections, unfortunately. So we're going to try to work through those and see if we can get a consistent 30-foot cross section all the way through, so we can at least continue the bike lane all the way to Route 7. And as I said before, our ultimate goal is to have West Rocks, France Street, and Park Ave a continuous bi-directional bike lane that will take you all the way to Wall Street. And once the Wall Street project is completed, those will have bike lanes as well. So it will just be a continuous network of bike lanes, and we can continue to build on that, what's already in place. So, that's just one of the elements that we're looking at for the future. And, like I said, later this week, we'll begin striping that portion on West Rocks. So we'll be out there.
This is great, Greg. Thank you.
Yep. Any questions? No? Okay. So next topic, the Sono Station garage bike racks. So the designated parking area inside the garage has started to be covered. The back accent wall and vertical concrete posts in the parking area have begun. I can share my screen. I can show you some of the updates real quick. So can everybody see that?
Yep.
So that is the area for the bike parking. They've begun covering the wall and doing the floor as well. And then the pole on the right-hand side here, that will also be wrapped. So you'll be visually able to see. We have logo, and I'll show you that next. We have bike racks on order right now. So once they are received, we'll begin installation process of the bike racks. We ordered 10 bike racks for this area, which we can fit. And on the back wall, we're going to have a logo with Bike Norwalk logo as well on the back wall. So that is in process right now, and then I will share this one. So this is what the wrap is going to look like for the visual pole, or for the concrete pole that's there. So it visually stands out.
Awesome.
So we are in the process right now. Any questions?
Do you have an estimated date that it'll be ready? It looks really good.
Thank you. Well, we're, you know, unfortunately, we're at the mercy of when the racks come in. You know, we're hopeful to, you know, over the next month or so to get them in, so that we can install them right away and get it completed. So I would say within the next month or two, it should be completed.
Awesome. Personally,
Any question, Ben?
Ben and then Judd.
Yeah, not a question. Just wanted to say that the wrap on that pole looks great. It looks really, kind of leaps out at you and makes it feel like the bike parking is not an afterthought. It's like a full feature of the rest of the garage. So,
right. Yeah, and our parking director, James Emery, has been overseeing this project, and you know, he's put a lot of work into it. And the parking authority, you know, like we talked about before, is making a large investment into bike parking, especially at the train station. So we greatly appreciate the funding that they provided to pay for this.
Go ahead, Judd.
Thank you.
Greg, there's a fairly heavily used bike rack outside that part of the station. And is there a plan for any signage to direct cyclists inside for parking?
We'll definitely look at those sight lines once we go in. I know James has talked about it, and Garrett, I don't know if you could speak more to it as well, but I know there's been occasions, you know, where we've been out there where we've kind of, you know, looked at signage to be placed to kind of direct the cyclist. So once we kind of have it installed, we'll definitely look at some places to direct cyclists inside and show them where it's located.
Good.
Yeah, I think that's a great comment, and Greg addressed it very well. I think we're looking at a combination of signage and pavement marking. So I think we're going to be pretty creative and ultimately look, I think James is looking at almost creating a path of bike pavement markings to guide people around the corner.
All right, Christine, and then let's move to the next item.
Yes, sorry, quick. And this is kind of a general question though about e-bikes, you know, like the racks that are being ordered, that an e-bike can fit in the racks. And also, and I'm ignorant about this, and I think as a commission, we should start to think about e-bikes more and talk about it a little bit more, but like having it charging, like a plug there or something, I don't think it works like that. I think you have to take them out but anyway, just about e-bikes.
Yeah, well, I know the rack should, they're going to be spaced about 3 feet apart from each other as per standard. So they should be able to fit, and you should be able to tie your bike up to it, even for an e-bike. All right, and then so moving on to the next, so our Complete Streets design guide. So a few weeks ago, it was approved by Common Council, and it was awarded to FHI to complete the guidebook. We're finalizing right now in the legal department, and that will allow the consultant to do a deep dive into the first step. Once we've given them the notice to proceed, the consultant will kind of take a deep dive into the city ordinances and the existing design standards, and we'll kind of work with them to define the scope of work. Once they kind of do that dive and kind of find more information on what the city has existing, that will kind of take us into the end of the year this year. And then we'll kind of put together a project scoping, for the rest of the timeline for completion. And we'll definitely need the Bike Walk Commission and the public to be part of the public review process. So once FHI has had time to look through those city documents and standards, then they'll be able to, put something together and hold a public information meeting. So we will all, we'll definitely make you all aware of that. And we also, definitely encourage all of you to attend those sessions as well and provide your input during that time. Wall Street corridor improvements.
Go ahead.
We're working right now, we're working with the library on Mott Ave there to schedule the next public information meeting. We're looking around, third week of November. And we'll share those, we'll share that date with you once it's made official. Of course, we encourage you all to attend that. This next meeting will be set up similar to the way the previous one. I don't know how many of you were able to attend that one back in June. But that one was, very much a, public involvement, where you got to kind of do breakout sessions and work, kind of identify items at individual stands and kind of provide your input there. So it's not just one big open forum. So there's going to be a lot of kind of mini areas that you can provide your input, and they're going to be able to share concepts and just some high level renderings, and provide some of the data that has been collected and provide feedback to date that was provided since that was collected from the last meeting, and as well as the survey that was collected. So there's a lot that the consultant Fuss and O'Neill will share with all of you, with all the stakeholders and the public as well. All the items that they've collected and will share.
Thanks, Craig. I just want to check in really quick. It's 7:20. We try and end at 7:30, and we still do have this paper discussion as well as other agenda items. So if we could wrap I hate to do this because TMP is putting out so much good work, and I want to hear all about it, and I think we all do. And we also want to ask questions about it, which is hard with the time constraints we have. But I think we need to run through the next few items.
Okay, we'll roll right through. We're have sidewalks. So the conceptual plans have been created. Where the city is meeting with District 3 with the state on Wednesday to see just if they, they provide their input for any obstacles for the sidewalks, especially along, Roate Ave, Route 136. And we also have a taxing district meeting on October 12th to kind of share the plans with them and, show the improvements to the area and the sidewalk design. So the meeting is on October 12th at 6:30. We think that they allow for public input, so we can provide you guys with more information once we find out. But of course, we would love to have anyone from the commission kind of voice their support for the sidewalk project. When it gets to that date. So we'll provide you further information once it gets closer to that time. The Transportation Master Plan, FHI, is completing the final portion of the plan. The public review of the plan will be sometimes next month. So you guys are going to have to attend a lot of public meetings coming up. So clear your calendars in November, December. So once, and at those meetings, they're going to share a lot of the plans, especially the sidewalk plans for Linden Ave, George Ave, and Riverside Ave. And, a lot of the conceptual plans that they put together as well will be on display. So keep your eyes out. We'll keep you posted on that. And then bike rack purchasing, obviously, as you can tell, there's a lot going on right now. And, bike racks are a priority, and we're actively working on the bike rack locations, especially ones that Tanner provided us. And, a lot of these locations, unfortunately, have to be built up in order to install the bike racks. And, we have, as Garrett talked about before, he's got 3 lots-up applications we're working on. We've got a lot of other projects going on, the connectivity grant. So, we tried to address this earlier in the spring with the on-call contract for a vendor, but unfortunately with the kind of the prices, the way they are fluctuating right now, we couldn't quite get locked in on prices with anyone. So we'll have to do just an individual order and put this out to bid, which requires another, bid, which requires an RFP. So it's on the list and it's a priority for us, but there's just, we have a lot going on right now to kind of address the bike racks right now. But we do have, like I said, we do have the ones from the parking authority going into the garage. And we do have the artistic bike rack going into East Norwalk train station right next to Brim and Crown of the train as well, that will be installed later this year as well. So we are putting them in. We're just, we'll address more, when we have more bandwidth, we'll be able to address more bike racks and get those installed, especially as more infrastructure gets installed, throughout this year and early next year.
Yeah, we understand that you guys have tons going on. I wanted it on the agenda just so that we could know where that is in the process, even if the answer is there's no movement.
Okay, that's it for me.
All right, thanks, Greg. Let's move right along. Christine, do you want to give a quick update about the classes thread?
Yeah, I'm just gonna be so quick because I really want to hear from like Dr. Bergerk because she's a guest here tonight and it sounds very interesting. But I don't really have that much updates. Tanner, we talked offline. Emily, I had 2 people respond about bike classes based on what was in the newsletter, and I think we should. The season is kind of getting short right now, so I appreciate the feedback about the conflict of interest regarding the commission's budget paying for an instructor, and that was clear and obvious. So the next step that I'm taking, so you all know, would be to propose this to the recreation department, but at this point, it's probably going to be for the spring, just because we're running out of time. It was supposed to be set up so that somebody could take advantage of the LCI instruction going on in New Haven, but that's in November, and the turnaround time for a class, I mean, maybe we can do it, but the concern at the last meeting we had was, would there be enough people? But based on the feedback I've gotten from people, I would have enough for a class of 6 interested people, and some that I met at that the evening the other night at the social. Thanks.
Thanks, Christine. All right, without further ado, let's get into this paper discussion. So like I said, I'm glad that Dr. Berkey, Wendy, is here to discuss this with us. Julia also, who works in public health for the city. The paper, I'll go ahead and share my screen with the paper. I included it as an attachment to the agenda. So I hope that some of you have the opportunity to take a look, even if you're just skimming it. But the paper is entitled Community Design and Policies for Free-Range Children, Creating Environments that Support Routine Physical Activity. So I'll give a quick overview. The idea here is that Mark Fenton, who did this, it's kind of a literature review. It's a collection of all the results in the research about the impact of a city's built environment and its policies on child development. The reason that says free-range children there in the title is that kind of references a movement or an ethic that was popular kind of around this time of being having a less hands-on approach to children and especially to transportation, right? That kids could actually get places on their own. But I don't want to talk too much. I want to mostly let other people who have read this paper comment on it and do a little bit of discussion. So who would like to go first?
Trying to unmute. Thanks for kind of having me to make a couple comments about this paper. And I do plan on attending some future meetings. It's been so interesting, not only to hear about topics that I talk about in my classes, but these things are happening in my own town. So it's the amount of connections that I can make with my students moving forward is great. But I feature Mark Fenton and his research and work in my class. We look at a similar paper. We also look at a presentation. It's a video where he is working with a town. He starts with a walkability audit with kind of some stakeholders in the town, usually a diverse group, walking around a city and assessing the walkability and accessibility. My students, we do something like this around our campus. We use the CDC walkability tool. And I think it's a nice activity for the students to do so that they can see you don't need a public health expert necessarily to assess some common sense things like whether or not a sidewalk is safe. One of the things that Mark Fenton also talks about and discusses is making sidewalks and areas where we would walk and bike nice looking and appealing. make it look like we belong there, like we're supposed to be biking and we're not just an afterthought. And that's something that I've been seeing happening and developing around our city. Another thing that I think about when I read an article like this is just the contrast that we sometimes see. I used to work out at the New Canaan Y, and I would get there sometimes right when school let out. And I remember seeing all these children obviously walking from school to their homes, and just a mile or two away, I didn't see as much of that around some of our local schools. And a lot of the issues that we're talking about tonight, complete streets especially, that's among the reasons why some of our children aren't walking to and from school. And then the last thing that when I always think of Mark Fenton, who I've met, he's a very funny, intelligent person, is he says that parents often think that nowadays it's actually more dangerous for kids to walk places and bike places. They are more likely to be hit by a car, or a big concern is they're more likely to be abducted. And he points out that it's actually safer today with those two topics with our children in most communities compared to what people think about associated with the 1950s and 60s. So that's kind of what I wanted to just bring up. I'd love to hear from others as well.
Thanks, Wendy. Yeah, anybody else want to comment on this paper? I want to point out a couple of things if people are too shy. In the abstract here, you don't have to get very far before you see some concrete. It says policy and intervention approaches that are recommended. Some of them are pretty straightforward, like bicycle and transit-friendly infrastructure, incentive policies, complete streets policies, which we're working on, thanks TMP. Transportation, not just recreation-oriented trail network. Audrey, did we lose Audrey? Is Audrey still here? I think we lost her. Audrey often brings up the example of a community she's familiar with in Georgia. I think it's called the Grange, that has a trail network that is pretty transportation-oriented. Safe routes to school interventions, but one that I think gets left off the conversation often in Norwalk and other places is this first one. It says zoning and development policies to protect open space, contain sprawl, and focus investment toward thriving mixed downtowns and village centers. In other words, land use policies like zoning have a huge impact on the walkability of a place. If you read farther into the article, it explains kind of at a high level, the reason for that is that if you can live closer to the destinations that you want to go, then inherently they become more walkable, more bikeable, just because the distances are shorter. If you live in a building where there's a grocery store or a little market or a pharmacy or whatever on the ground floor, there's no need to use your car to get there because you just walk downstairs, right? If you have a school in your neighborhood, a neighborhood with a school is more mixed use in a sense than a neighborhood that has no school that's purely residential. So that's the one thing I wanted to call out, because I feel like it gets lost in the discussion that we tend to have. Our meetings tend to be mostly about what's the infrastructure that TMP is building, which absolutely is a critical piece, and what education, how can we help with the education component? How can we do public outreach to help people understand, here's how to bike safely, here's how to walk safely, here's like, a map, so you know where the infrastructure is. We liaise with the police department as well, sometimes more effectively than others, about enforcement. But another critical piece that I think we haven't talked about as much that I would love to see talked about more is how can we encourage land use that lends itself to walkability and bikeability, which this paper calls out. So any other thoughts here? Christine, go ahead.
Wendy, I just was wondering, I mean, I think it's so cool that you're in Norwalk and you're doing this work, and I wonder if any of your students or future students would ever want to participate with this commission and help us with some of this work. Like child obesity is mentioned here. It's so critical here, especially in an urban community.
Absolutely. The course I teach is the behavioral aspects of physical activity, and there's a significant not only public health aspect to it, but also a built environment piece. So yes, the answer is yes. Maybe in the future we can talk more about that. And Tanner, I thought you brought up a great point about the zoning, and it made me think of some areas in Norwalk where we are seeing more of that mixed land use. You know, we have apartments, and on top of them are the stores. You know, kind of by Curry Tire, the area I'm thinking of. You know, we're mixing it up, and I'm seeing more and more people walk around and bike around. And it's just kind of more vibrant as well.
Oh yeah, it's funny that you'd refer to this part of town by a tire shop.
I hang out there a lot.
It's more walkable than
I have
most parts
tire
of Norwalk,
issues.
right? Yeah, I think of this part of town as
Yeah.
where the Waypoint is, right? The new housing.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, I wasn't prepared to identify these areas. You all are so much better at me than that.
But it does contain both, to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
And Norwalk contains multitudes. Yeah, this part of town definitely is growing quickly. I just today I rode past here on my bike, and this lot right here, there's like active construction going on there. So I hope that means that soon there will be buildings there that will house people, that will also house amenities that people can walk to and bike to. But I don't have any information there besides what I can see with my 2 eyes.
But yes, to speak to that other point, I definitely would like to explore more about how I can get a couple of students involved in the work that's being done.
That'd be awesome. Do you, just off the top of your head, do you have a good sense of like how many of your students live in Norwalk? Do many of them?
Not very many. I probably only a couple, but I do teach junior level students who have access to transportation to Norwalk. So, you know, I don't anticipate a problem with that. I usually have 1 student from Norwalk per year, so not very many.
Gotcha. Go ahead, Ben.
I also don't know if any of the other towns around us have something like this commission. So if someone's in a neighboring town and wants to be involved in something like this, you know, might be a good place to start for them.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I'll just Tanner, I'll just add a couple things to the zoning conversation, just for members of the commission or the public that are present, that they might not, they might be hearing that and they might be thinking certain things, but some of the major impediments to development or reasons why sites get upscaled in architecture and planning is due to parking regulations. So one of the first things that we do to study a site for a developer that comes in is to look at how many cars we can fit on the site. And that kind of, you know, backs you into how many apartment units you can fit on the site, which is a little depressing. Many cities in recent years have made strides in amending their parking regulations, which are part of the zoning documents, to reduce or eliminate the minimum parking requirements, specifically in downtown areas that are transit rich and walk rich environments, because you do end up with sort of a negative feedback loop or a positive reinforcement, depending on which way you want to look at it, where, you know, you're making space for more vehicles, so therefore you are still incentivizing driving. So there are things that can be lobbied for outside of just, you know, higher density, because you're not going to get the higher density without higher parking ratios, without amending your parking regulations. So getting something that's right for the neighborhood, and that doesn't mean that there's no parking anywhere. That just means that, you know, that's part of the equation, and you need to build that in. And one of the other things that parking does that contributes negatively to the housing issues that we're dealing with to some extent is it increases the cost of the building, because if you can't fit it all in your land area, you need to build building or structure either below ground or above ground to house the cars. And that is rent that is not necessarily coming back to the developer through rental fees, or, you know, to make up for the construction costs. And oftentimes the parking is the more expensive part of the building to build, because it's below ground or it's non-combustible concrete construction. So it's more expensive materials, and they have to build more space for the cars that doesn't house people. So most people would probably rather deliver a building that could house people and generate rent, rather than house cars with lots of extra wasted space. That's not to say that they wouldn't provide it if it was necessary in a market that they were in, but again, just part of the equation, something to consider when you're considering your own zoning reform, I'd recommend looking into the places that have amended their parking and just look at that. So just throwing that out there for people to chew on.
Thanks, Colin. It doesn't address the like minimum parking requirements here in the paper, but it does talk about charging, or at least visualizing the true cost of parking.
Yeah, and I'm just more tying that into the zoning, and also I guess the other thing is
your point. It's a very good point.
Minimum lot size is another big one. So there are lots of architects and planners that can creatively use very small amounts of land to provide housing, and parking requirements, absolutely get in the way of putting a very modest, multifamily dwelling of 3 or 4 units on an infill urban lot, largely because you need more room for parking than you do for the actual building that you're trying to build. So it hinders development of sites like that. And if anybody wants to look up something very creative that was done, there's a project called XS House in Philadelphia that was built on essentially 2 parking spaces at the end of a block, and it's gotten a lot of architectural press and interesting news over the past few years. But that's a pretty cool project. I think it's 4 or 6 apartments, but very tall and small, very skinny.
Yeah, I think I found it here. There it is. So the lot's like what, 8 feet wide?
Yeah, I think about that. It may be like 8 to 10 feet wide. It's very, very skinny, and maybe 40 feet in length, maybe a little bit more. It was like a leftover parcel from a freeway, I think, that cut through the city. So it was like cut a block in half and some leftover land. But
well, thanks for the point. It's a good point. Ben, go ahead.
Yeah, I just think that Colin makes a good point. A lot of areas in the city are zoned in such a way that they can never be walkable. And even if you had sidewalks, which a lot of areas don't even have that, everything is just so far apart that, kids will always have to be driven around forever, just to bring it back to the point of the paper here. So, as long as you've got the AAA zone is kind of the poster child, where you've got 1 acre lot minimums, I think. I could be wrong on that, but something really large. Those are car dependent to the end.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Any last thoughts on this? We are about 10 minutes over time. I'm glad that we were able to carve out some time to chat about this. And if people want to make a couple more points, I'll entertain them. But if not, I think I will move to Emily's item, and then we'll adjourn. Brian, go ahead.
Very quickly, I like this piece because I didn't read it till today, honestly. But I went out for 5 miles with my kid yesterday on his bike. And so when I read this, I read it as the dad of an 11-year-old. And I liked it. And it made me realize how much I like where we are, because he can get on his bike and go see his buddies. And he used to ride his bike to school. He wants to ride to school now, but I don't. Strawberry Hill's kind of a mess. So I'm like, no, maybe next year. That's kind of, I just want to say, I really enjoyed the piece, and reading it as a dad who rides a bike a lot, whose kid is starting to ride a bike a lot, it made a lot of sense.
Cool. Thanks for your perspective, Brian. Carly, go ahead.
I wanted to make a point, but if it's not on this topic, so if anyone else wants to say anything else on this, I'll give you the floor first.
I'm happy to turn a minute over to Carly.
Great.
Say a last thing about the paper. Going once, going twice. All right, go ahead, Carly.
Okay, so this did not make it on the agenda for tonight, but I just wanted to remind you that we have the Reconnecting Communities grant application going in. That's due October 13th. I know we spoke about it at the Norwalk Night Out. So that is going to be a planning study for
West Ave, right?
West Ave, MLK, also including Crescent Street and the NRVT, all underneath I-95, and basically reconnecting the 2 communities that I-95 bulldozed through when it was created in the 50s. So it's planning, so there's no concrete, design that'll be up for public discussion. And once we, hire a consultant, but I'm trying to get you the letter of support today. Hopefully I'll get it to you tomorrow. So we're just looking for bike walks support. It'll mostly, right now it's a very auto-oriented corridor. So we're trying to increase the prioritization of walkability, bikes, other alternative transportation measures along West Ave, and also bettering the connections under 95 on the other side, because they're kind of dark. They become, illegal dumping grounds a lot of times. There's a lot of graffiti that goes on. So just trying to bring in complete streets measures, public art, landscaping, lighting, wayfinding signage to those areas to better connect the neighborhoods of South Norwalk, particularly the MLK community in South Norwalk, up to the rest of Norwalk and Wall Street area.
Thanks, Carly. Thanks for reminding me of that. I think I remember telling you that I would put it on the agenda and I completely spaced, so I'm sorry about that.
No problem.
But yeah, so at a high level, if we're going to submit a letter for that we need to vote on it tonight, so that because it's due before the next meeting. I think that this is great for two reasons. One is complete streets, which this is essentially going to study how to make West Avenue into a complete street. And then second of all, to improve the connections, like Carly mentioned here, through Oyster Shell. This is already like quite a reliable connection for people. But I think that, like she said, that there's room for improvement there. So I would entertain a motion to write a letter of support for this.
Yeah, I'll move to support it on a high level.
Thanks, Colin. Christine looked like a second. Emily looked like a third. Judson looked like fourth. Sorry, Judd. I just read your name off the screen.
That's okay.
And then I'll vote for it as well. So that's fine. Thanks, Carly. Anything else?
Great. Thanks, Tanner. Nope, that's it.
Awesome. Okay. Last thing on the agenda is Emily. Do you want to update us on what you want to put on social media and what you've been putting on social media?
Yep, I'll be really quick. So we've been having public events that Bike Walk has been attending. Tanner mentioned we went to the National Night Out hosted by the Norwalk Police Department. And from that, we got a lot of newsletter signups. So through that, we're sending out a monthly newsletter follow-up with upcoming events that we're involved in, as well as news or anything of interest we want to share with our followers. Christine sent me a book and event of interest that I would like to include in that, and that is Jody Rosen at Albertus Magnus College, and that's the Two Wheels Good book, the history and mystery of bicycle, of the bicycle, and that's on Friday, October 7th. But also there's an event coming up with the Norwalk River Valley Trail that I'd like to bring up and include in this newsletter, which is the Mutt Strut Halloween. It's a fundraising event that they're throwing on October 22nd, and that's on Saturday. And I would love for, again, more Bike Walk commissioners to get involved, and members or volunteers. If anyone's interested, I'm gonna send this out via our newsletter, but please, reach out to me. I'll include my email in that. But we're posting on social, like Tanner just ran the Sono half. We had a meeting outside of our commissioner meeting about strategic plan brainstorming and having a presence at more of these social events like the Oyster Festival, Nice Festival, Sono Half, Sono Arts Festival, things like that. We met, Sam was at that meeting, Phil, Tanner, myself, and there was someone else. It was Brian maybe, or there was someone else was at that meeting. I'm sorry, but we're just trying to establish again a presence and opportunity to hand out more information on the Bike Walk Commission and get more people involved. So this upcoming newsletter, which is again like a follow-up to our meetings that happen monthly, as a reminder to join from and get more public input and public involvement, but also to share what events we're attending. And if there's anything that anyone wants to include in this newsletter, please reach out to me and I'll make sure to add that. Sorry, that was a lot.
Carly, your hand's still up. Is that left over? Do you want to say something? All right.
Nope, I'm good.
Emily, thanks for aggregating all of that. The talk by Jody Rosen, I didn't know about, and I'm glad you pointed that out. I actually listened to a podcast recently where Jody was on talking about his book. So thanks for finding that. Any feedback for the newsletter or for social media for Emily? All right. Thanks for all you do, Emily, for keeping the public informed and connected. I want to point out quick that Emily is entirely responsible for getting us onto Instagram. Thank you, Emily. The last thing on the agenda is to approve the minutes. These are the minutes from our last meeting, which Delene, as always, does a great job of taking. I have actually already reviewed them and sent her my feedback. So I will entertain a motion to approve these minutes. They are good minutes. Christine, thank you. Do I have a second?
Yeah, second.
Emily, Colin, Judd, what do you think? Great. All in favor? Passes unanimously. Thanks everybody for coming. Anything we should do before we conclude the meeting? Speak now.
Motion to adjourn.
That's right. Thank you. Would you like to make a motion, Colin? Thanks. Everybody's good. All right. Okay. Thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everyone.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good evening.